Hello everybody and good afternoon and thanks for joining me on this session where I will be talking a little bit about IoT and different problems when it comes to enterprise security, IT and OT. So how many coffee machine developers do we have in the room? Please put your hand up. One? Well, good. So starting off a little bit, so a few words about myself and the company I come from. So I'm from Tieto, and Tieto is a Nordic-based company, an MSP, an integrator. So we are about 14,000 people listed in Helsinki Stock Exchange, and we also have a site in Wrocław where we do two things, which is product development services for our customers and security services. And the unit I represent here is Tieto's MSSP, so Managed Security Services Provider business. And that's the sort of background, so coming from enterprise security background. And so what about the coffee machine? And it's good to get started by understanding a little bit what actually is there. So we have different kinds of actors in the game. We have guys who are white hat hackers. Do you know what these guys, who are they and what they did? Anybody? No?
Security researchers.
Yes, that's correct. What they did? Yeah, the recent one. These two guys exactly.
I don't know actually. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so these are the guys who hacked the Jeep. But they were doing it in a white hat way. Then you have different activists who are after something. They have a cause. The cause is changing, but still it's some ism that they are after. And then you have some nation type actors. What's common in the whole sort of area of different actors is money. Money makes the world go round, and everyone has been probably reading about different things from the news and so forth about ransomware and other things. So how to make money by hacking? The first one is simple. So you put in some ransomware into the systems. And this is the usual thing what you might have seen or your friends might have seen. Of course, this never happened to any of us. But what happens when you get an infection like WannaCry? First, you sort of recognized, okay, I wasn't protecting myself well enough, or I clicked something maybe I shouldn't have clicked. Then you re-image the computer and you return the stuff from the backup. So how many has backups that are less than a week old? Hand up. How many has backup that is less than 2 weeks old? Hand up. 3. How many has a backup at all? Close to half of the room. That's good. So if you are infected, and this is also when you hook up services like Dropbox. So who thinks Dropbox is a backup? Meaning, yeah. So if you get hit by an encryptive ransomware, what happens is that your stuff in your auto sync folders are also encrypted, and then they go to Dropbox, and then you have a lot of encrypted files in your Dropbox, which means that it actually is not a backup.
Well, Dropbox and other such services have history, so you can...
Yes, some have history, some don't. But the question is that if you are able to retrieve the good known state back to your computer, you are saved. So what you might have lost 1 day of work, you might have lost a couple of emails, but basically you're up and running in 2 or 3 hours. That's nice, and that's simple in a way. What if it happens to a fleet of enterprise computers? Of course, the enterprise has to clean the stuff up. For example, if you read about Petya or non-Petya, Maersk reported in their half-year annual reporting that it costed them 300 million USD. They did a world record in rolling out Windows 10. They rolled out 200,000 workstations in less than 4 months. And that's incredible. So it is a cost, even if you run into things like getting infected. But then, if you look a little bit further than that, what happens when your customers start seeing it? This is not really generating a trusted feeling to your, and who knows where this is from? Yeah, Deutsche Bahn. So do you trust now Deutsche Bahn systems more? No. So the problem is that the hard currency in security, in any security, is trust. And when it goes public and you start seeing this kind of stuff on your train schedules, it's not really something you actually want to present to your customers. Okay, one might say that this is just a billboard showing the train tables and the schedules. And that's nice. What if it's your ATMs, your observation systems for traffic control? What if 6 hospitals out of 10 are closed because of a ransomware? So what happens then? Why, by the way, did they have to close the hospitals, or 6 hospitals out of 10, because of WannaCry in NHS, meaning English National Security or Healthcare Services? Why did they have to do that? Because all the MRIs, all the scanning information, all the allergies and other things are on the computer, which was encrypted. So they didn't know where to start operating because they didn't have the MRIs or X-rays. They didn't know if the person was allergic to antibiotics or something else. So they had to close down the hospital because they didn't have information. And if you go to an ATM and you are in a foreign country and the first thing you see is WannaCry on the screen, do you want to put your card in there? Yeah, somebody says. And then you are out of local currency and you are hungry and maybe thirsty. So it's not a nice situation. So, to the coffee machine example. What happened here? There was a control network that was completely isolated. It was controlling a lab environment where there was temperature controls and a lot of other controls in place, and it was completely isolated environment. Then the company figured out that the employees are not happy enough, so they need free coffee. So they thought they get the smartest and nicest coffee maker in the world to cater for that need. So the install guy came in, and first the install guy put in the coffee machine. Then, because the coffee machine is so smart that it actually contacts the factory or the vendor and tells if it's low on coffee or if it has some other maintenance needed, so that the free flow of coffee keeps coming and it's fast and convenient and happy. So then he took the network cable and hooked it in. Nothing worked. He was like, damn, this must be disconnected network cable, because he actually connected it to the isolated network environment of the lab. So then he figured out, shit, there's Wi-Fi here. No problem, I'll just hook it up to Wi-Fi. But he didn't take out the other cable, which meant that the coffee machine was actually a port inside the controlled environment, which was infected completely with WannaCry. And this is because the company wanted to do something nice for the employees, and the install guy didn't really think. Or maybe he thought, but he didn't understand what he was sort of supposed to do there. So there's another example. What is this? Pacemaker. It is not just any pacemaker, it's a pacemaker that is connected device. So that means that it is connected to a bedside station which is connected to the internet. this pacemaker, the idea is that when you go to sleep, then the doctors download the information from your pacemaker and make adjustments remotely so that you can live happy and fulfilled life and so forth. Now the problem here is that the developers of this device had thought that nobody will find it from the internet. And then they also thought that security is so big an investment here that they didn't want to do it. So what they did is hard-coded admin, the usual password. And as a result of this, 500,000 US citizens carrying this pacemaker are now called to do a firmware update on their pacemakers. And that's scary shit. Because the point is that you carrying this device, somebody, and I mean anybody, can actually make some adjustments how your heart works. And if you are called by your doctor, hey, would you come in? I need to do a firmware update on you. Like, come on. That's not nice. And then moving a little bit forward on the thinking. So what made those guys think that nobody would find it? They thought that there's so many connected devices in the world that actually it's just sort of one piece of the puzzle. And investing into, especially, this is maybe a little bit extreme example, but just any consumer electronics, like the coffee machine, like your smart fridge, like the stuff probably Santa Claus is going to bring you, where there's a lot of wearables and then you hook all of them up to the internet. How do you make the buying decision on that? First of all, some of you might look at some tests where there's comparison about the technical functionalities of these boxes. Some of you might trust some brand like Fitbit, Apple, whatever. And some of you might be looking to the price. And let's say that the company has wanted to push the device out as fast as possible, which means less testing normally, with minimum cost, which means less effort on putting the product together. So what that means is I want functionalities, security. Nobody cares about that. And then you land into a place where you go and do some firmware updates on yourself in the future. So it's not really a good situation because the consumer is wanting to get the cheapest possible option. And if the companies go and say, hey, we did shitload of things for security, and that means that our stuff is more secure than the others. Oh, by the way, it costs 30% more than the same thing from another vendor. How do you think they do business? Even if they do business, then comes somebody from Asia, for example, who does a knockoff of that. Without the security, it looks exactly the same and it's half price. And there goes the business again. So it is difficult if the consumer decisions are driven always by the money. So moving back to the example here. So the guy said, and this is a direct quote, that we thought nobody would find these devices. Hey, bingo, shot on. How difficult is that? I did this yesterday. Typed default password, and what we can see. In Saudi Arabia, there's some boxes using default passwords. Simsalabim. There's the IPs, I can contact them. And what this does use the beacon functionality. If you ping a device, it will tell you, who am I? As the pacemaker, as with any device. And this is really, really advanced system. So there are pre-made searches for different things, like how to find IoT fleet that supports Mirai vulnerability, meaning that if you are looking for botnets for yourself, There's pre-made searches. You just click. You don't even have to be able to type that. And it's really fast. And if you get your login, meaning that you register for an account and pay, you get more functionalities, you get more pre-made searches, and you get more fuller experience, faster experience. And this is where the world is going. Everything is visible. So then let's talk about those devices. So each of the device has application in it. And if you think about application, any application, and this is a study made by Veracode, so it's not my personal opinion, 2 out of 3 applications are containing OWASP 10 vulnerabilities. Who doesn't know what is OWASP top 10 list? One hand up. So this is the stuff that has been there since late 90s. There are free engines in the internet which allow you to scan for OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. And still, the research says here that 2 out of 3 applications are containing those vulnerabilities. How hard would it be to run these tests? That's a question. Again, back to functionalities, 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 and lower price, lower price, lower price. Then let's move a little bit to my territory. So let's move towards thinking about information security activities. So every company normally has a security manager, depending on the company size, CISO or similar role. And what do the companies do? They normally do this type of things. So they make sure that there are certain activities done, and this is something where there's a lot of standardization done. There's a lot of best practices done. This is what you should do if you want to be a respected company, if you want to be compliant with something. These are the fundamentals you need to do, and this is what they train in the CISO school, if you put it that way. So there's multiple things. So let's do an exercise here together. Question: how to eat pancakes in a restaurant without paying? How? Sorry? So take it and run. Else? Yeah?
Win a prize.
Win a prize.
Switch the POS terminal.
Switch the terminal. Anything else? Sorry? Yeah, well, work for the place, yeah? Yeah, you can say that this is bad, I can't give it to the customer, and then you eat, yeah? Home pancakes? I thought of these. Eat and run. Use an expired or invalid payment instrument, or fake money for that matter. Pretend to be part of the staff, that came up. Threaten another customer to give you his food. That works. Steal another customer's food from the table or from the kitchen for that matter. You can shout a bomb and then see people running and eat everybody's food. You can pretend to be VIP and then you can pull out the gun. All of these might work. The question is, what does the pancake vendor do to avoid this? And if you look back to this list, this is what a company CISO does to avoid this kind of a situation. And then the pancake place, you go in and you pay and they trust you that you are doing legitimate business. So it's about people. All of these examples before, all the technical things, it is in the end people who want to get money by exploiting something which is not theirs. Gartner talks about people-centric security. So it is about, should be driven from business outcomes. It is about visibility and transparency. So how many of you have had antivirus alert, well, let's ask who is running antivirus on your laptop? Half. That's less than I expected, to be fair. So, sorry? So any of you have gotten a message from your antivirus program saying, I found a harmful item or something similar? Yeah, there's few. So did you understand anything of that? Well, if you are here, you probably are interested in security, so you might actually have understood something about that. But if it's a average secretary doing something in the train station selling tickets, and they get this announcement, do they learn something about it? Harmful item found. Well, great. Can I continue working? So the point is, visibility and transparency are ways to influence behavior and culture. And the behavior and culture, the message I found a harmful item could be dressed up as saying, hey, you visited this and this web page where you got a Trojan, and this Trojan threatened to do A, B, and C on your computer. We removed this and we informed your administrator to block this site from being accessed by our company employees. Please make sure that you take this 2-minute training on understanding why did this happen and what you could have done to avoid it in the or what you should do in the future to avoid it. That would be providing visibility. There's an action and a reaction. First, understanding you did something which resulted in this. You clicked open an attachment in an email. And then not saying, bad, 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 you do 10 push-ups. No, but to tell them that, okay, well, in the future, you actually should do things in a little bit different way. So it's about empowerment. It is about accountability. So in the end, well, I don't mind if it would be the same person doing the same mistake the third time. Then 10 push-ups are probably in order. In Finland, I'm from Finland, I forgot to tell you that in the beginning, there's every single kid in Finland during the winter time will try and put their tongue to a lamppost. No, most of us haven't done it twice, but there are some who do it twice. And I don't know if you know what happens, but the tongue gets stuck to the lamppost. And you need hot water, or then you need to yank your tongue out, and it hurts like hell. You can try it when it gets sub-zero here, so recommend that. Have some hot water close to you. And finally, it is about trust, because the trust is the hard currency in security. A company with this CISO who has done everything by the book, if he hasn't projected the trust to his employees or her employees, nothing will happen. And then the next problem is what I showed earlier with the ATMs. Do your customers trust you after that? No, probably not. So that's where it starts. So how do we make security visible? It's sort of nothing close to rocket science, nothing what my colleagues were talking about earlier today on how to hack into the systems. It is, first of all, to understand that the top management has security on the agenda. That's really simple. You get what you measure. If everybody's measured on revenue, you probably get more revenue. And then you pay some other consequences somewhere. You need to visualize the risks in an understandable way, including the top management. So anybody here, are you working for a company that visualizes the security risks so that you see it, let's say, on a monthly cadence, one way or the other? It might be a report, it might be a dashboard, it might be article into intranet, anything. 1, 2, more than I expected. That's great. So the point is that first thing to recognize anything is to see things. That's how advertising works. You see an advertisement in the TV in the evening and you didn't know that you need a new vacuum cleaner, but after seeing 5 of those advertisements, the next day you are buying a new vacuum cleaner. Then you need to document accesses. So everything starts from access. You only need to have access to the stuff that you actually need to have access. Also physical premises, so it is not about IT, it's not about OT, it is the whole 9 yards. And I'll give you a short example on that one. So, you know, when you go, let's say, to a steel mill or paper mill, they keep running 24/7 and the devices are like 200 meters long and so forth. So you don't really turn them down with like a car engine, but you need to drive them down over 2 weeks and so. And you have maintenance breaks once every 2 years on that kind of a system. When you have a maintenance break, you put your permanent employees on vacation and in comes 200, 500 subcontractors to fix everything and change the wearing parts and all that. How do you control that? First of all, you give the subcontractors full access to your premises. You don't have a clue what those guys bring with you. There was an example where there was a control room of this kind of a machinery and the security guy went in and saw that the guy is surfing websites on the computer, and then he was asking, you are on a controlled environment, so how on earth can you even do that? Oh, I brought my own dongle with me, I just hook it up. Documentation. Sorry. So documenting the things is equally important to knowing the things. Security is all about process also. So nobody in your staff will follow a process unless they understand it. So in the coffee machine example, if the process would have been that somebody from IT has to go and confirm any connected device in the company, and it's explained because we have this controlled environment that cannot be accessed by anybody, it would have made sense and it probably would have been done. Even with the HR who ordered the machine, because the intention was to make the employees happier. The other important thing is to make sure that these security processes don't hinder the work. So I have a personal example of that. So my wife's friend called me and asked, I'm changing jobs and congratulations, why are you calling me about that? Oh, my new company is blocking Facebook, so how do I circumvent that? And I told, yeah, great question, I'm not going to answer that one. Then she came, I saw her like 1 month later. Oh, my colleague knew a way, now I'm in Facebook again. So the security was hindering the process, which meant that people figured out the way to go around that. So that's the end result. So it was a stupid blocking in the beginning, from the beginning. You need to train your stuff. I gave the example about the 2-minute trainings. So for example, we are heavy believers in nano trainings, which means that you don't roll into a course once a year just before the ISO 27000 certification. I bet nobody here is doing that. And then you make sure that the staff remembers the stuff for 2 weeks when the auditor is in the office, so they know exactly the right answers, and then they forgot the whole thing. And then the next year you do that again. So basically you are sticking your tongue to the pole every year. But it should be contextually provided, so you get the training exactly when you did something, so you understand the action and the reaction that follows. And then you understand what should have been the action in the first place. And then lastly, how many know that your company actually checks out on user experience of the security stuff. That's another thing. Back to the making life miserable. If the security stuff, well, somebody might have a CRM that is making life miserable, the same applies. It needs to be user-friendly, because especially the guys who are graduating from the universities today, they are used to using Facebooks, WhatsApps, and so forth. Then they go to a company which is, in their opinion, living in a stone age. How do I contact my colleagues? Oh, you have this phone on the table. I haven't seen those since I was living with my parents back in the days, and so forth. So the user experience has to be thought out. So in sort of, to complete the picture, you have to understand a few things technically. You need to isolate your production environments, and you need to isolate all of them. You need to monitor the environments, and I mean monitor all of them. So again, with this coffee machine example, there was no monitoring on this lab environment, closed environment, because it was closed, so why bother monitoring that? And it always gives the same stuff. Another example from the OT world would be there is how would I put it, because I can't preach any customer. So let's put it in a way that there's a company and they have a large IoT fleet on manufacturing side, and the fleet is really old, so it's dated back since the 90s, all these sensors, so they have been developed over time, and it's still using Windows NT for control boxes and so forth. So there was a lot of traceroute running in the environments, and the guys didn't know that. Why was that? Because one of the vendors of these OT devices actually had just figured out that ping sucks in finding out different things, so we use traceroute, we are more advanced. And it was written in the documentation, so there was like huge amount of traceroute running around the network. So how do you recognize when somebody is actually tracerouting the stuff in a not so nice approach or intention? There's no way until you baseline your stuff, which means that you have to monitor that. You need to control the physical accesses. Everybody says, yeah, of course we do that. We have the cards and we have this and that. How often you actually audit the accesses and ask the question why? So for example, I run the MSSP business for my company. I don't need to have access to the data centers. If I need the access, I will ask a separate permission to enter once, and then I'm out, because I really don't even want to be in the data centers. You need to have plan, and I mean a solid plan, for IT and OT access controls. And this is where it gets tricky. The roles are changing, so people change positions, and also you have the subcontractors, as I explained. So the question here is, what and how are you doing to avoid the situation where you have an employee who has been in the house or in the company for 20 years, a long-time employee? How many accesses does he or she have that are no longer valid, that are not needed with the current role, and why nobody has spotted that? So the person might have started as a system administrator with full access and now is in some managerial position, let's say in sales, and the same guy might have root accesses to the mainframe. So that shouldn't be like that. IoT. Any and all devices which are in any way linked with production, audit them. Keep production network for production, not for coffee machines. If you don't have a network for coffee machines, it's really simple to do one. You can even split that out from your Wi-Fi network and just make sure that it's titled My Coffee Machine Network. And then again, everybody knows, hey, this is for the coffee machines, so that's great. And if none of this works, there's a really simple way to get started. Whitelisting. Just whitelist the applications that are allowed to be run on a certain server. So if the server is doing one purpose, it probably needs 1 or 2 applications to be whitelisted. All the rest, take out. If you want to go then more to the network level, or if you can't use whitelisting with some old devices, then you're looking at network protection, zoning, these kind of things. And if you have possibilities so you don't exactly know what you can't and what you can whitelist, then you're looking at stuff like host-based IPSs and firewalls. And they are more often safer than the network versions of that. So you need an integrated approach. And this is where the catch-22 is, which is too often forgotten. The technology is 1/5 of the puzzle. You need to have automation. And automation, I mean the pure amount of logs on a production system. If you start analyzing them, there might be 10 billion logs, out of which 1/10, so 1 billion, would be somehow relevant even to collect. Out of that, let's say 10 million are somehow interesting. Out of that, 1 million is somehow relevant contextually. And out of that, there's 10 that actually you need physical people to start an investigation with. Out of that, 1 or 2 are actually something you need to block out. The amount is so big that you cannot do it manually. Then you need people, well-trained people who actually know what they are doing, and they need to be cross-functional. They need to understand the business in order to do good work protecting the business. You need to have those processes, as I mentioned, and the processes need to be understood and built in a way that you can actually follow them, not hindering your work. And then you need to understand what are the actors, motivators, tactics, and this is something that my colleague spoke earlier today. Questions? Comments, sarcastic remarks? Yep. So the question was, what do I think of Dev or SecOps movement? I think it's great. The only problem is that, again, you are back into, is it functionalities that you want, or is it quality that you want? Because you need to, it's always a sort of a middle ground between there. So how do you do SecOps? How do you build up the capability? You need to have solid platforms that you work with, and you need to invest time and effort into making them work. And secondly, I think the more important thing is that you also have ability to control the accesses, because too often the SecOps movement goes to the extension that we need to have access to everything. That's the only way we can be really productive. And that's wrong. You need to find mechanisms to limit the access. When the question why is asked, why do you have access to that? There needs to be an answer that is sensible and makes sense to run the business. Did I answer your question? Other questions? Great. So closing the event, just wanting to highlight, as I started with about Tieto. So we've opened the site also for security service here in Wrocław, and we are recruiting. So in case you are thinking about your own future and you prefer working in a multi-vendor, multi-customer environment, in an MSSP doing either consulting or technical work or SOC work, I have a colleague, Jakub, here. And Jakub would be handing out forms for you to fill, and we will be more than happy to contact you. big thanks for your patience and your observations and just generally listening to me. Hope this was useful to everybody. Thank you.